The sun was sinking low behind the jagged red cliffs when I first saw her. Heat shimmered across the empty desert road, and the sky burned orange and gold, as if the land itself were on fire. I had been driving for hours, lost in my own thoughts, when a lone figure caught my eye. An old Apache woman stood at the edge of the road, leaning heavily on a carved wooden staff. Her clothes were worn and dust-covered, yet there was something dignified about the way she stood, unmoving, as if the desert belonged to her. I slowed down, my instincts warning me to keep going. Out here, people didn't stop unless they had to. But her eyes met mine, dark, sharp, and impossibly calm. They didn't beg. They didn't fear. They simply watched. I pulled over before I could change my mind. "Are you all right?" I asked, stepping out of the truck. The heat hit me instantly. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded once. "I am old," she said, her voice steady, "not broken." I offered her a bottle of water. She accepted it with both hands, drank slowly, and then looked at me again as if weighing something unseen. Her silence made me uneasy. "My name is Naya," she said at last. "I was walking to my daughter's home. My legs forgot they are young." I offered her a ride, and she climbed into the truck without hesitation, as though she had already known I would stop. As we drove, she asked about my life, where I came from, what I did, why I traveled alone. Her questions were simple, yet they felt precise, cutting straight to the truth. When I told her I lived by myself and had no family nearby, she nodded slowly. "You carry quiet with you," she said. "Like a man who lost something." I didn't answer. Some truths didn't need explaining. When we reached a small settlement near the canyon, she stepped out of the truck and stood facing me. The wind lifted her gray braids, and the desert seemed to fall silent. "I heard you don't have a wife," she said suddenly. I blinked, caught off guard. "No," I replied. "I don't." She smiled then, not kindly, not teasing, but certain. "That can be changed," she said. "My daughters are perfect for you." Before I could speak, she turned and walked away, leaving me alone in the fading light, wondering how a single act of kindness had already begun to rewrite my fate. I tried to convince myself that the old woman's words were nothing more than a strange desert moment, the kind that fades once routine returns. For 2 days I buried myself in work, telling myself that I'd imagined the weight behind her gaze, the certainty in her voice. Yet no matter what I did, her words followed me, echoing in the quiet of my house, lingering in the spaces where sound should have been. On the third morning, a knock came at my door. When I opened it, the last people I expected to see were standing on my porch. Naya was there, her posture straight despite her age, her carved staff resting firmly in her hand. On either side of her stood 2 women, both young, both striking in their own way. The taller one carried herself with calm strength, her dark hair tied back, her eyes serious and assessing. The other wore her hair loose, her expression open and warm, as though she were trying to ease the tension she must have sensed in me. "You helped my mother," the taller woman said. Her voice was steady, controlled. "In our family, that matters." I stepped aside, unsure of what else to do, and invited them in. They didn't rush. They moved through the house as if they were learning its shape, noticing things I had long stopped seeing. Naya sat down without being asked, her eyes taking in the room, then returning to me. "This man lives alone," she said to her daughters, as if I weren't standing right there. And he did not hesitate. "I didn't expect anything in return," I said quickly, feeling the need to make that clear. Naya gave a soft, knowing laugh. "Kindness that expects payment is not kindness." The women introduced themselves. The serious one was Ayana. The smiling one was Tala. They explained that they had come to invite me to dinner. Nothing more, nothing less. Ayana spoke carefully, choosing each word, while Tala watched me with curious eyes, as if trying to understand who I was beyond the first impression. That evening I found myself at their home near the canyon, sharing food and listening to stories carried by firelight and memory. They spoke of their family, of traditions passed down through generations, of a life built on trust rather than convenience. I felt like an outsider, yet strangely welcomed. When it was time to leave, Naya looked at me the same way she had on the roadside. "Some doors open once," she said. "Whether you walk through them is your choice." As I drove away, I realized I was no longer certain which road would lead me back to the life I once knew. The days after that first dinner slipped into a quiet rhythm I hadn't expected. I told myself each visit would be the last. Yet I kept returning, drawn by something I couldn't name. I helped where I could, mending a loose fence, carrying water, fixing small things that had been ignored for too long. No one asked me to stay, and somehow that made it harder to leave. The land itself felt like it was watching, measuring my intentions with every step I took across the sand. Evenings were the hardest to forget. We sat near the fire as the sky darkened, the stars appearing one by one. Naya told stories of her people, her voice low and steady, speaking of ancestors who listened to the wind and trusted signs others dismissed. Ayana listened with quiet respect, her presence solid and grounding, while Tala laughed easily, asking questions, bringing warmth to the silence. I found myself listening more than speaking, learning how little I truly knew about belonging. One night, as the fire burned low, Naya fixed her gaze on me. "The wind brought you to me," she said. "But the wind does not force a man to stay." Her words settled heavily in my chest. I thought about my empty house, the long nights filled with nothing but memories and regrets. I had built a life that functioned, but it had no roots. Here, everything felt connected, to the land, to family, to purpose. Ayana spoke next, her voice calm but firm. "We do not promise ease," she said. "Life here asks for honesty. There is no place to hide from yourself." Tala looked at me then, her smile softer than before, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "And there is no place where you are alone," she added quietly. I realized this wasn't an offer wrapped in romance or fantasy. It was a choice, plain and difficult. To stay meant learning a different way of living, one shaped by responsibility as much as affection. To leave meant returning to a life that suddenly felt smaller than I remembered. I stood and walked a short distance away, letting the cool night air clear my thoughts. The wind moved through the canyon, whispering against the stone, carrying a sense of patience that felt older than time. When I returned, Naya was smiling, as if she already knew my answer. "Let me stay," I said, my voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "Not to take anything, but to learn." Naya nodded once, her eyes bright. "Then the ancestors have heard you," she said. Above us, the wind shifted, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was exactly where I was meant to be.